Hi, this is Lhadon Tethong coming to you from Asia, where the Olympics are still going on, and so we're still here supporting the incredible actions of Tibetans and people of conscience around the world at this important moment for the Tibetan struggle for freedom and human rights. There was an action in Beijing last night, a beautiful symbolic action that triumphed against all the odds at the Bird's Nest at the Olympic Stadium just after the 200-meter hurdles finals. Many of you will know that that is the event that John Carlos and Tommy Smith did their incredible protest around in the '68 Mexico City Games. Last night, a Tibetan named Norbu from Germany, along with 3 supporters, they unfurled the Tibetan flag at the Bird's Nest, and despite being followed by up to 50 plainclothes police all day long, despite all of the security and the incredible repressive measures in Beijing stacked against them, these guys not only did this action, but we just saw that there actually is a photo. There is a record of what they did with their fists in the air, being tackled by the police, Norbu holding on to the flag. It's a brilliant and beautiful and triumphant moment for Tibetans at a time when the Chinese government wants silence and wants no one to hear what's happening inside Tibet or hear the truth about the Tibetan people's suffering under Chinese occupation. So that's the latest from Beijing. At the same time, we have 6 wonderful human beings in detention in Beijing for 2.5 days now, the longest of anybody from our side. And we don't know why they're being held so long, but I want to just talk to you about who they are and what they were doing there. James Powderly is an artist, a technologist, a visionary, creative, brilliant man who came into our lives at just the right moment. As a Tibetan, I'm so thankful to have met him when we did. It was very serendipitous. James and his partner from the Graffiti Research Lab were disinvited from a Synthetic Times art show in Beijing. They were told that they would have to censor their own voices, that they would not be allowed to just say anything. And so they said, no, it's wrong and we won't go. I think that in and of itself was an incredible action to take. James would probably say it was the only one they could have. But there are sometimes not so many people in the world who are willing to stand up for what they really believe in such a righteous way. And so anyway, James had made a decision to travel to Beijing and to send a message of support and solidarity to the Tibetan people and to the movement and the promotion of a free society in China. He had this laser, which you can read more about on our site, that he was going to be beaming messages of free Tibet and other political statements on key landmarks around Beijing. But James never got to premiere this incredible piece of technology and expression because he and 5 others were detained in the middle of the night on August 19th, early morning. And we don't know the exact circumstances of their detention, but we do know that they're guilty of no crime. If they're guilty of anything, it's believing that a better, more just world is possible and that the Chinese authorities have no right to deny their citizens or Tibetans or anyone their right to freedom of expression and to their basic human rights. The others that are being held along with James, Tom Grant, Jeff Ray, Brian Connolly, Michael List, Jeff Golden, these are guys who, some of them citizen journalists, bloggers, activists, they were there to document our actions, support the Tibetan people and the Tibetan struggle at this critical time, and to observe what was happening in Beijing around the Olympic Games. Their work is so important because without it, we may never, hear the critical, important stories around the world that citizen journalists, bloggers, and documentarians bring aside from the mainstream media. You know, they were at the various protests and the actions that we took there. They took beautiful photos and film, and they brought the story of the Tibetan people in this moment to the world. And we thank them for that from the bottom of our hearts. And as a Tibetan, on behalf of the Tibetan people, I want to thank them for the work that they've done. I know that they would want us to tell the story, along with their detention, to tell the story of what's happening in Tibet and in China right now. And I don't know how many people have heard, but there was a Tibetan nun in Kanse in eastern Tibet, in what the Chinese call Sichuan province, who was shot and killed, shot 5 to 6 times, and killed on August 10th, just after the Olympic Games started. Her name is Sonam Yongzum, and according to eyewitnesses, Tibetan eyewitnesses, she went out into the center of town to the police station, and she raised slogans. She said, "There are no human rights in Tibet, there are no human rights in China, and still the Olympic Games are going on in Beijing." She was immediately shot and killed. We can't get confirmation of this story and therefore coverage in the mainstream media because Tibetans inside are too frightened to speak to anyone. These stories have been relayed by eyewitnesses to Tibetans in exile, but even that is difficult at this time. Tibet is locked down. There are no journalists allowed there. There are Chinese authorities and police posing as journalists, trapping Tibetans into telling them how they feel about human rights and then arresting them. And in Tibet that means detention, beating, torture, and perhaps death. There are apparently 8,000 to 10,000 troops deployed in this one region, this one area of Tibet alone. And so without the work of bloggers and citizen journalists to help us get the story out, very few people will ever hear about Sonam Yongzum and her sacrifice. There are 2 Chinese women I want to talk about who just in the last 2 days we've learned in Beijing. These were 77 and 79-year-old women who applied for permits to protest in the Chinese government's official Olympic protest parks, which of course have just proven themselves to be a trap. And these 2 elderly women have now been sentenced to 1 year re-education through labor. That means 1 year in a labor camp for trying to speak out, for call for rights and for justice for themselves, as their homes have been destroyed and they have had no compensation. I gather they've been campaigning for years, but they are now victims of the Chinese government, and along with the IOC and Hill and Knowlton's terrible, cynical protest zone traps. And so I know that our guys in detention right now, while probably, I know it's a difficult time for them and for everyone, I think that what they would want is for everyone who's concerned for them to in turn be concerned for the people that they went there to support, and to bring along with their stories the story of Sonam Yongzum and these 2 elderly Chinese women and everything that they represent to the world in your reporting and in your efforts on their behalf. And to the families of our friends in detention, I want to say, I understand that this is a hard time, and thank you for all of your understanding and your work to support us as well. And I look forward to seeing these guys soon, as you do. And their work right now is priceless. And there really are no words to say how much we appreciate what they've done at this time. So I'll come back to y'all with another update soon, but that's it for now from Asia.